Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. We are continuing on with our study of the Nakshatras with Michael Reed, and today we're going to be beginning with Ashlesha Nakshatra. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Michael. It seems like you have some important points to point out about this particular nakshatra and where we're going now in this lunar zodiac. So take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Well, actually, Ashlesha is a very interesting nakshatra. Well, to me in a lot of ways, but prime amongst that in terms of conveying information about the nakshatras is this marks the end of the Rajasic set of nakshatras. And after this particular nakshatra, we then begin the nakshatras which are tamasic at their foundation. So what happens at this particular point is the divine impulse that we've been talking about so far reaches its final stage of formation. And it begins to enter the world of duality. And we're going to discuss a lot about that when we get into Ashlesha. And as we begin to see with the next nakshatra, then we have the divine impulse or the divine seed becoming completely materialized or concretized within the tamasic set of nakshatras. So it's a very powerful nakshatra, and for such a powerful nakshatra, what better representation than the Nagas or the serpent gods?
Right. And so with these nakshatras, when we go nakshatras 1 through 9, then those are going to be nakshatras that the foundation or the primary influence starts with Rajas. And then when we get from 10 onward, then we're going to be into the basis is tamasic. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And then
that's the foundation of each of the nakshatras. Yeah.
Right. And the final set will be we'll start with the sattvic state.
We'll start with sattvic, the last 9. Yeah. So
Great.
the first 9 are Rajasic, second 9 are tamasic, and the third 9 are sattvic.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
And it's very meaningful the way that works, because it really marks the stage of this journey that we're looking at through the nakshatras. But as I was saying, the deity connected with Ashlesha are the serpent gods. And there's so much symbolism that's connected with the serpents that really conveys the symbolism that's connected with Ashlesha in general. But what I'd like to start with is the concept of the fact that snakes have a forked tongue. So there we have the concept of duality. We also can take a look at the fact that with a snake, it can either inflict you with venom or it cannot inflict you with venom. And what we begin to have here, if you look at it in terms of the divine impulse coming into creation, it's the recognition of one's inherent power, one's inherent potential. And as the soul is becoming materialized in the body, here comes the decision of, how do I use this power? Do I use this power for, to continue to evolve myself and to help others evolve? Or do I use this power for the sake of pure power itself? Right. And in ancient mythology, you can see there are several stories that involve serpents. And one of the chief ones that most people are familiar with is the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden and tempting Eve to partake of the apple, which led to the knowledge of good and evil. So here again we have it, the concept of duality, which before that state, that there's not that knowledge. There's just the state of, of the pure existence. There's also the association with serpents of the Sheshanaga, which if you ever see pictures of Narayana, which is a form of Vishnu, the Sheshanaga is always represented as a support for Vishnu. And Vishnu is on an ocean of milk, which is the cosmic ocean. So we have a lot of symbolism that's there. You have the milk, which is about nourishment. You have Narayana, a form of Vishnu, Vishnu being about preserving. And supporting that foundation of preservation, you have a serpent, which is about duality. And if you think about it, that's the material world that we exist in. It's, we have all the nourishment that we need here to evolve. If we can connect to the concept of Vishnu to preserve us here, we have that as well. but it exists within a state of duality. And it's a very powerful set of symbolism, or set of symbols, I should say, in relation to that. But when we have that knowledge of our power, and when we have that knowledge of our strength, again, it's the choice of how to use it. And the Shakti that's connected with Ashlesha is the power to inflict with venom. Now, that sounds really kind of negative or dark or evil, and sometimes people, or when there's a tense alignment involving a planet in Ashlesha Nakshatra, there can be the tendency for striking out. Especially if you, talking about the outer planets, if you had Uranus transiting Ashlesha, there could really be the potential for that, or maybe a connection between Uranus and Mars, talking here about the Tajika aspects, so to speak. There could be the potential to strike out unexpectedly. But there's also the other side of venom too. There are the things in life that we want to destroy. There are the things that we want to get rid of, the things which hinder our growth. And also Ashlesha provides us with the impulse to do this, because it gives us the wisdom with which to see, and with which to see clearly. It's ruled by Mercury. And with that mercurial rulership, it gives us very powerful insight to use our consciousness in order to see what's underlying a situation and to penetrate to the very core of it. I thought next we'd cover the basis above, the basis below, and the result, as we did with all the other nakshatras. And the basis above with Ashlesha is approach of the serpent. So again, if we follow the concept of looking at the basis above as being the heavens, here we have the heavens sending down energy, or the universe sending down energy. And that energy can come in the form of a transformation, that once we go through that transformation, we'll gain wisdom and we'll gain understanding. But while we're looking at that particular set of circumstances, it's something that we actually fear, as per the basis below here on Earth, trembling and agitation. We are, sometimes quite afraid to face those changes, or to face those difficulties that are coming, even though on one level they relate to prosperity of the highest sort. Mm-hmm. Then we have the result of that, which is destruction of the victim. Now, I always never really like those words, because it's not that one's really a victim. One can make oneself a victim by resisting the changes, right? And then you can look at yourself as being a victim of the universe. But it's not that you're really a victim, it's just that your ego has made you a victim because you're resisting the changes that are there. This can also be looked at in reverse, because if we consider the concept that it's the end of the Rajasic nakshatras, here you have the heavens wanting to give birth to a being, wanting to give birth to something. And that impulse is afraid of coming here into the world of duality. So then there's the trembling and the agitation. And the destruction happens when that divine impulse then takes on form. So it works both ways, and that's really appropriate in terms of this nakshatra, because it's a very dualistic nakshatra.
So then with that idea, with the basis above and the basis below, so the approach of the serpent, if we think about that as like a transformational energy, and I'm sure many people attribute that to like a kundalini energy or some sort of spiritual energy that transforms the individual. And then the basis below is the trembling and agitation, which would be just thinking about the idea of the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna is talking to Arjuna in the beginning, and Arjuna is getting ready to go on that spiritual path, that path of awakening, and that's symbolized by him fighting his kinsman and so on. And he throws down his bow and says he can't do it because he's overwhelmed by what that might mean to him to slay these people or representations of his consciousness that feel so important to him. And part of the destruction of the victim, could it be that that's the time where that aspect of our consciousness of the individual realizes, like when Krishna says to Arjuna, this isn't befitting of one of noble birth, so stand up and fight. So it's where the one loses that kind of victim consciousness, that one is being forced into something, and then is taking up that strength to achieve that transformation, or that idea of greater clarity. Does that relate to it at all, do you think?
I think that's a very excellent analogy. I couldn't have come up with a better one. That's like the perfect one. It's that moment.
Well, yeah, what got me thinking about that was, and I know there's another passage in the Gita where it talks about Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna, and he says, among the Nagas, I am Ananta, which,
right.
I've been told is another name for Shesha, and
yes.
that word means endless. And so I always found that kind of fascinating too, because then that kind of lets us see that thing which Vishnu rests upon, or that protects Vishnu, is an endless. I don't even know how to describe it, but it seems like pointing out that this idea of duality, or this idea of creation, really is an endless thing. And not to get too far off track here, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead, please.
So I'm just curious about how this may tie into this nakshatra. Oftentimes I found people that are always searching for something, or seeking for something, or even like in the sciences, there's always this thought that we can just find the smallest particle. We can just find that next thing. And I've always had this idea that that's kind of like a trap, in the idea of this knowledge of good and evil, and that now that we have duality, and now that we know that this whole consciousness is infinite, and there's going to be no true end to what we can discover. And so as long as we keep looking and keep seeking, we're always going to have something that we're trying to find, because there's really no end to our experiences. So there will always be something more, So I'm just curious with this nakshatra, if it would speak to possibly the realization, because it's got the Rajasic basis, and then it's got Sattvic, which I know you're going to go into here briefly. But start with that Rajasic basis, realizing the idea of transformation, that can be something that is endless, and that somehow maybe part of it might be going beyond that kind of transformation, and letting go of that venom or that poison that makes us think we always have to keep looking for the next best thing or the next deepest thing. I think I might have taken it a little too far.
No, actually, I think that's quite apropos. I think that, and part of the symbolism that's connected with this, we think again of the symbolism of the serpent. Serpents can go into the very dark, deep recesses, right? Some serpents as well, especially cobras, they hypnotize their victims.
Right.
So it's the concept of being drawn in.
Yeah.
And so the world of duality, on one level, it does draw us in.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we're seeking something that's really wonderful. I also liked the thought that comes from the Yoga Sutras. If we think of yoga as being stopping the modulations of the mind, so to speak, there comes a certain point, even if you're a practitioner of yoga, where yoga itself becomes a hindrance to the path. And you have to let that go too. It's the final surrender, because otherwise you're still having an attachment to something.
Right. So if someone possibly had Mercury and Jupiter in their 12th house in this particular nakshatra, could it maybe speak to that being part of their own individual path? That idea of needing to sort of let go of these attachments to Jupiterian things, wisdom-related traditions and mercurial things like that, need to sort of manage and explore everything. I'm just putting that together because it might be someone's 12th house. Would that be an issue that you would consider?
That could be something that's very much there.
Okay.
Self-development, completely into self-development to the extent that they, don't want to stop.
Right. Okay.
Like us astrologers in general.
Yes,
exactly. It becomes very passionate. There's so much with Vedic astrology that you can learn, that you're just always learning.
Right.
And you feel like you're always trying to take on new techniques and learn new ways of doing things. And it's inexhaustible. It really is. And it's actually one of the wonderful things about it. But if you get so caught up in that, then that can become a detriment too.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, especially from the role of an astrologer, sometimes something is right in front of your face, but you're looking for it so deeply, that you're getting entranced in the search or the
exactly
passion, wanting to devour it.
And it's like the idea of someone being paralyzed by information. And I see that happen a lot with astrologers is, where they learn all these techniques, or they get into really hardcore mathematics of astrology. And at the end of the day, you ask them to like tell you something about their chart and they can't say anything because all they see is the overload of information. So they're hypnotized by all the possibilities of it. And I don't think that's not just astrology. I'm sure there are other things that can be true for as well, but that's a very good point.
Yeah, most definitely. But I think in terms of continuing, well, actually, let's use that, as another point. So we're talking about the Rajasic, Sattvic energy. So there you have that Rajasic foundation. I'm always seeking. Well, what am I seeking? I'm trying to seek information or knowledge or find that balance, find that potential, tap into that pure spiritual strength, or tap into my power in order to do something here on the planet. That it really fits in terms of the blend of those three particular gunas. It's very appropriate for that.
Right.
We already said the ruling planet was Mercury, and it doesn't come any surprise that the deity from the Trimurti that's there is Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting to cut through all illusion, and that can be the powerfully positive side of Ashlesha Nakshatra, wanting to cut through the illusion, get to the root of something.
Right. And how does that primary motivation tie in there then?
Dharma.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the primary motivation is Dharma. So going back to the whole concept that we were using with the Bhagavad Gita, that's a perfect example of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is the victim or the person here becomes so entranced in what the transformation might bring, or how they're wishing to avoid a difficult transformation, or even they become excited about something that they're trying to achieve, so to speak. And at the root of it is really just needing to realize the Dharma, what one needs to do, whether one wants to do it or not.
And so we did I did bring up some examples of Mercury and Jupiter, but just to help us understand a little bit more about that idea of this nakshatra and having maybe a planet or a house lord in this nakshatra, what might be something that a person might ask, or a person might be experiencing in life if they had one of their natal planets in this nakshatra? How might they work with it?
I was about to say the sun would be a good example. Let's use a similar analogy that we were using, which would be the sun in the 12th house.
Okay.
In Ashlesha. Then you would have another similar story of a person or a soul, so to speak, who is somewhat behind the scenes in terms of their energy or their strength or their power, but they're really into self-development if it's being used positively. If it's being used negatively, or in not such a healthy manner, I should add, rather than negatively, then they might be wrapped up in self-analysis to the extent that they get caught up in self-judgment, always seeking something deeper inside of themselves, especially, for instance, if they had a conjunction of Ketu with the sun.
Right.
In Ashlesha.
And so the idea of self-development, are you focusing on that with the sun because the sun is a self factor, or is it because it's the 12th house? What's the
12th house more, but also the sun being the soul, being the Atman, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
If you had the moon there, the person, let's use the moon as an analogy, and not very well supported. The person may have a tendency to react or to strike out at particular times, to become so deeply engrossed in what they're feeling about the circumstance to the extent that they react without really thinking.
Right. So it's more of an emotional striking out, more of an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine then if we had, say, you gave an example earlier, but if we had, say, Mars, or let's just say Mars, would that be more of like a possible physical aggression in that regard, or just because of nature?
Yeah, that's a good example. Let's look at how Mars would have a hard time stopping.
Right.
If Mars was in Ashlesha, because especially if one got angry, it would have a hard time coming down from that space of anger, right? But they'd be able to get a lot of things accomplished when it's working in a positive manner. They would be very active and very,
And with that idea of Mars, it could be, using the basis above, basis below, and the result. If Mars wasn't well supported in the chart, or if Mercury, the ruler of Ashlesha, wasn't well supported, Mars might be more destructive in that way. Whereas if Mercury was well supported and Mars was well supported, then maybe Mars might be have better capacity to kind of destroy the negative aspects of the ego, or the negative things that are getting in the way. Would it work in that regard?
Exactly. Mars would be very incisive.
Okay, so it'd be so Mars being logic, it could be like destructive logic, like the kind of person that uses logic to manipulate things, or it could be logic which really just helps you to see straight through to the point of the issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, those are good examples. Thank you.
Yeah. Ashlesha is such a powerful nakshatra. It really is.
Yeah.
In terms of the outer planets, I've always wanted to do a case study of people with Pluto and Ashlesha.
How long ago would that have been?
That would have been a generation, like maybe in the 50s.
Okay.
40s and 50s. Yeah.
Seems like you'd be able to find a lot of people with that then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and how that's acting in the chart, and and get to the depth of that. I've encountered a couple of them.
Yeah. What was it like? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, very, very thirsty for knowledge, very passionate about learning things, can get really like wrapped up into things very deeply, because Pluto being the lord of the underworld, here in a nakshatra that's dealing with serpents, which like to, kind of explore and go into little nooks and crannies. You've got a very powerful combination there.
Right. Interesting. Good.
Yeah.
Well, good. So do you have any other thoughts on the Ashlesha Nakshatra then?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I think we covered a lot there. We exhausted a good amount of material. So,
yeah.
All right.